My name is Simone, and I am 34 years old. I spent 10 years building a man up from a used car salesman to a Buckhead executive, only for him to try and throw me away like yesterday's trash in front of every power player in Atlanta. He thought he was the king of the jungle, but he didn't realize I was the one who bought the cage, the lock, and the key. Before I tell you how I destroyed him, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. And honey, hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been underestimated by the people who are supposed to love you most. Now, y'all, let me set the scene for you because the audacity was at an all-time high that night. We were at the St. Regis in Buckhead for the annual Summit Marketing Excellence Gala. If you know anything about Atlanta, you know that the St. Regis is where the new money goes to pretend they've always had it. The ballroom was dripping in crystal chandeliers that probably cost $50,000 apiece, and the centerpieces were overflowing with white hydrangeas and orchids that smelled like $300 an hour. I was sitting at table 1, the VIP table, wearing a navy blue silk dress from Loro Piana. It cost me $4,500, but you wouldn't know it unless you knew what you were looking at. No logos, no loud patterns, just quality. I call it the librarian glow-up. I kept my hair in a slick back bun and wore a simple pair of diamond studs that were exactly 2 carats each. Marcus, on the other hand, he was doing the absolute most.
He was wearing a custom Tom Ford suit in a shimmering midnight blue that cost $8,500. He had a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist that he claimed cost $65,000. I sat there, sipping a glass of Chateau Margaux that the waiter poured for $1,200 a bottle, and I just watched him. See, Marcus thinks I'm boring Simone. He thinks I'm the woman who just handles the spreadsheets and stays out of the way. He spent the whole cocktail hour acting like I was his personal assistant. "Simone, hold my drink," he'd say, not even looking at me. "Simone, did you make sure the gift bags were set?" I didn't argue. I didn't roll my eyes. I just did what a gray rock does. I stayed neutral. I stayed calm, because I knew something he didn't. I knew that Patek Philippe on his wrist was a high-end super clone he bought for $800 from a guy in a basement because he couldn't actually afford the real thing. The math wasn't mathing, and I was the only one with the calculator. Finally, the CEO of Summit Marketing, a man named Gerald, stood up at the podium. "Tonight, we honor the man who brought in over $10 million in new business this year," Gerald announced. "The Salesman of the Year, Marcus Valentine." The room erupted. Marcus stood up, adjusted his jacket, and didn't even glance at me. He walked up to that stage like he was the second coming of Christ. He took the mic, flashed that $5,000 veneer smile, and started his speech. "Success is about growth," Marcus said into the microphone. His voice was booming. "It's about shedding the things that hold you back. It's about being around people who match your frequency." I felt the air in the room change. You know that feeling when you're at Sunday dinner and you see Big Mama start to look at someone sideways because they're about to act a fool? That was me. I felt it in my spirit. "I've spent a long time being loyal to my past," Marcus continued, looking directly at me. "But as I stand here tonight, accepting this award, I realize that to get to the next level, I have to let go of the weight that's been dragging me down." The room went dead silent. "Simone," he said, his voice cold as ice, "you've been a good wife for the struggle years, but we are in the success years now, and honestly, you just don't fit the brand anymore. You're stagnant. You're just too much dead weight. I'm filing for separation, effective tonight." Gasps rippled through the ballroom like a wave. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, looking at him. "And because I believe in being honest," Marcus said, grinning now, "I'd like to introduce the woman who actually inspires me to be great. Tiffany Davy, come on out." From the side of the stage, out walked Tiffany. She was 22, wearing a dress that was basically 3 strings and a prayer, and she was a fitness influencer with 2 million followers. She looked like she spent her entire life in a gym and her entire paycheck on lip filler. She draped herself over Marcus like she was a trophy he'd just won. Marcus looked back at me, waiting for me to break. He wanted me to scream. He wanted me to make a scene so he could tell everyone I was the crazy, bitter ex-wife. Now, y'all, any other woman would have stood up and thrown that $1,200 bottle of wine at his head. But I'm an actuary. I deal in long-term gains and short-term losses. And right now, Marcus was a liability I was ready to write off. I slowly stood up. The heels of my Chanel pumps clicked against the marble floor. The sound was like a heartbeat in that silent room. I walked toward the stage. Marcus actually stepped back, thinking I was going to slap him. Tiffany hid behind his shoulder.
"I didn't touch him. I didn't even look at her."
I reached into my small clutch, a vintage piece worth $3,000, and pulled out a small, gold-wrapped gift bag. "I knew tonight was going to be a big night for you, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, smooth, like I was reading a bedtime story. "I wanted to give you your anniversary gift early. Since you're so focused on the brand and the future, I thought this was appropriate." I handed him the bag. Marcus laughed, looking at the crowd. "See, this is what I'm talking about. Always trying to buy my love with her little savings. Go ahead, Simone. Let's see what you got me." He reached into the bag and pulled out a stack of papers. His smile didn't just fade, it vanished. It was like someone had sucked the soul right out of his body. He started flipping through the pages, his hands shaking so hard that the fake Patek Philippe was rattling on his wrist. "What is this?" he whispered. "That," I said, leaning in so the microphone would catch every single word, "is a forensic audit of our joint household account. It shows the $32,000 you took to pay for Tiffany's breast augmentation. It shows the $15,000 you spent on business trips to Miami that were actually just you taking her to the Mandarin Oriental." The crowd started whispering. Marcus's CEO, Gerald, stepped closer to the stage, his face turning a deep shade of red. "But more importantly," I said, tilting my head, "those papers are a formal notice. See, Marcus, you told everyone you bought our house in Tuxedo Park, but you forgot that you didn't have the credit score for a $5 million mortgage. I bought that house through my private land trust, and since you just publicly ended our marriage..." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. "You have exactly 1 hour to get your things out of my house before the locks are changed. And Marcus, don't bother looking for your car. The lease on that BMW was in my company's name. I had it towed 10 minutes ago." Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. Tiffany looked like she was looking for the nearest exit. "Wait, Simone, let's talk about this," Marcus started, his voice cracking. "The math isn't mathing for you anymore, honey," I said, giving him a small, polite smile. "Bless your heart." I turned around and walked out of that ballroom without looking back once. I could hear the chaos erupting behind me, but I didn't care. I walked out to the valet where my blacked-out SUV was waiting. As I pulled away from the St. Regis, I looked at my phone. A notification popped up from my private banker. Account balance $7,400,000 and 0 cents. Marcus thought he'd won the night. He thought he'd embarrassed me in front of the world, but he forgot one small thing. He was playing checkers, and I've been the one owning the board the whole time.
But y'all, that was just the appetizer. The real meal started when Marcus got home and realized I hadn't just taken the house and the car.
I'd taken the one thing he actually needed to stay out of prison. Now, y'all, if you thought the gala was a mess, you should have been a fly on the wall when I got back to the house. I didn't rush. I didn't speed. I let the ventilated seats in my $200,000 Range Rover massage my back while I listened to some smooth jazz. I needed my spirit to be as still as a pond before the storm hit.
I pulled into the driveway of our $5 million mansion in Tuxedo Park. This house is a monster, all white brick, floor-to-ceiling glass, and a front door made of solid mahogany that cost $12,000 by itself. I walked inside, dropped my $3,000 clutch on the kitchen island, which is a single slab of Calcutta marble that set me back $60,000, and I poured myself a drink.
I didn't go for the cheap stuff. I reached for the Macallan 25. A bottle of this liquid gold goes for about $25,000, and tonight it tasted like justice. I sat there in the dark, the only light coming from the Sub-Zero wine fridge that held another $30,000 worth of vintage grapes, and I waited. I didn't have to wait long. About 45 minutes later, a beat-up Toyota Camry from a rideshare app pulled into my driveway. I watched through the security cameras on my phone as Marcus hopped out. He didn't have his fancy BMW anymore. He didn't have his pride. He was stumbling, his $8,500 Tom Ford suit jacket wrinkled and hanging off his shoulders like a cheap costume. He burst through the front door, slamming it so hard I thought the glass might shatter. "Simone!" he screamed. His voice was raw, echoing through the foyer. "Simone, you crazy... Where are you?" I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just took a slow sip of my scotch. "I'm in the kitchen, Marcus, and please lower your voice. The neighbors actually have class, even if you don't." He rounded the corner, his face a deep, ugly shade of purple. He looked like he'd been crying, but I knew Marcus. Those weren't tears of sadness. Those were tears of a narcissist who just realized his mask had been snatched off in front of the whole town. "You think you're smart?" he hissed, leaning over the marble island. He smelled like cheap sweat and expensive gin. "You think you can just kick me out of my own house? I put my name on this lifestyle. I'm the one people see in the magazines." I looked at him, really looked at him. He looked like a fake baller who'd finally run out of quarters. "Marcus, honey," I said, my voice as smooth as the silk on my $4,500 dress. "The only reason your name is in any magazine is because I paid the PR firm $10,000 a month to put it there. And as for your house, you might want to check the paperwork I gave you at the St. Regis. This property is owned by the V-Star Land Trust. I'm the sole trustee. You're just a guest who overstayed his welcome." "I built this," he yelled, throwing his arms up. He accidentally swiped a $3,000 Baccarat crystal vase off the counter. It hit the floor and exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces. I didn't even blink. "That's another $3,000 you owe the estate. Add it to the tab." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus shouted. He started pacing the kitchen, his breathing heavy. "I'm calling my lawyer. You can't just change the locks. There are laws, Simone. I have rights." "You have exactly 12 minutes left on the hour I gave you," I said, checking my watch.
It was a Cartier tank in rose gold, worth $35,000. I bought it for myself when I closed a venture capital deal he didn't even know about. And as for your rights, you signed a post-nuptial agreement 3 years ago, remember? The one you didn't read because you were too busy picking out the rims for a car you couldn't afford? It clearly states that in the event of infidelity, you waive all rights to any property held in the trust. And Marcus, honey, I have photos of you and Tiffany at the Four Seasons in Miami that cost me $5,000 to get from a private investigator. They are very descriptive.
Marcus stopped dead. The silence in the kitchen was so heavy you could have cut it with a steak knife. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the fear. He realized the gray rock he'd been stepped on for a decade was actually a mountain.
"You've been planning this?" he whispered. "For how long?"
Since the day I found a receipt for a $2,500 Chanel necklace in your pocket that I never received, I said. Now I've been generous. I had the house staff pack 3 of your suitcases. They're sitting by the garage. I kept the real stuff, obviously. I left you the super clone watches and those knockoff designer tracksuits you like to wear when you're pretending to be a mogul at the gym.
You can't do this, Simone. Think about Sunday dinner. Think about Big Mama. What is she going to say when she finds out her grandson is on the street?
I laughed then. It wasn't a mean laugh, it was just a tired one. Marcus, Big Mama is the one who told me to watch your hands. She said, "Simone, a man who talks that loud is usually trying to hide the fact that his pockets are empty." She's already seen the video from the gala. She texted me 10 minutes ago. She said to tell you her house is full, so don't even think about showing up at her door. Marcus let out a sound that was half growl, half sob. He turned and ran toward the stairs, probably trying to grab something else, but he didn't even make it to the first step.
2 men in black suits stepped out from the shadows of the dining room. I'd hired Elite Protection Services for $5,000 for the night. They weren't there to hurt him, they were just there to make sure the trash got picked up on time.
"Your hour is up, Mr. Valentine," the larger man said. His voice was like gravel. Marcus looked at the men, then back at me. He realized he was outgunned, outplayed, and definitely out of money. "You're going to regret this," he screamed as the guards took him by the elbows and began leading him toward the front door. "I'm Marcus Valentine. I'll be back in a week with twice as much as you. You're nothing without me. You're just a boring, fat bookkeeper."
I didn't answer. I just watched them haul him out. I heard him shouting all the way down the driveway until the heavy mahogany door clicked shut.
Finally, the house was quiet. I walked over to the window and watched the Uber pull away. Marcus was gone. The fake baller had been evicted. I sat back down at the island and picked up my phone. I had one more thing to do before I could sleep. I opened my banking app and went to the secondary accounts tab. See, Marcus thought he'd been smart. He'd opened a secret account at a small bank in Buckhead, thinking I wouldn't find it. He'd been funneling consulting fees into it for months, money he'd stolen from his company's marketing budget. There was about $250,000.50 in there. He thought it was his escape fund, but he forgot that I'm the one who set up his digital security. I tapped the screen 3 times. I didn't steal the money. I'm not a criminal like him. I simply flagged the account for suspicious activity and linked it to the forensic audit I'd sent to his CEO. By tomorrow morning, that money would be frozen by the feds. Marcus thought he was leaving with his luggage and his secret stash. But as I finished my $25,000 scotch, I realized I'd left him with one more gift he hadn't opened yet. He thought he'd lost his house and his wife tonight. But when he tries to pay for that hotel room in an hour,
He's going to find out that being fake rich is a lot more expensive than he ever imagined. The silence in that house the next morning was better than any song on the radio. Y'all, there is a specific kind of peace that comes when you finally scrub a narcissist out of your living space. It's like the air is lighter, the colors are brighter, and even the coffee tastes like it cost $50 a cup.
I woke up at 5 a.m. draped in my $1,800 fret Italian linens. I didn't jump out of bed. I didn't panic. I didn't check my phone to see if Marcus had called. I knew he'd tried. My block list was already working overtime. But I just lay there and enjoyed the quiet of a $5 million mansion that finally belonged to me, and me alone.
I walked into my primary bathroom, which, by the way, has 800 square feet of heated marble floors and a soaking tub carved out of a single block of black onyx that cost $45,000, and I started my routine. I applied my $500 jar of La Mer cream with the kind of focus a surgeon has. People always saw me as plain Simone, the woman who didn't wear enough makeup or loud clothes. They didn't realize I wasn't hiding. I was just investing in the foundation.
See, back when I was at Spelman, the best HBCU in the country, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I wasn't the girl at the parties. I was the girl in the library. While the other girls were chasing ballers, I was studying actuarial science.
Most people don't even know what an actuary does. They hear insurance and their eyes glaze over. Marcus used to tell people I was a boring bookkeeper. He'd laugh at cocktail parties and say, "Simone just likes her little numbers and her spreadsheets."
Bless his heart, he had no idea. An actuary is a professional who analyzes the financial consequences of risk. We use math to predict the future. We look at a situation, calculate every single way it can go wrong, and then we put a price tag on it. For 10 years, I wasn't just Marcus's wife. I was his risk manager. I was the one who calculated exactly how much fake rich nonsense we could afford before the house of cards collapsed. And more importantly, I'm a venture capitalist. While Marcus was busy spending his Salesman of the Year bonuses on $5,000 dinners to impress people who didn't even like him, I was moving money into the Gray Rock Holding Company. I was buying tech patents, investing in green energy, and quietly acquiring distressed debt. I walked into my home office, which is hidden behind a secret bookshelf in the library. This room is my sanctuary. It has a $4,000 Herman Miller chair and a desk made of reclaimed walnut that cost $7,500. I sat down and opened my $3,000 MacBook Pro. It was time to see how the risk was playing out for Marcus. I logged into the internal server for Summit Marketing. I still had my administrative access because I was the one who set up their entire data security infrastructure 3 years ago as a favor to Gerald, the CEO. Marcus thought I did it for free. I did it for the backdoor access. The company was in shambles. Marcus being arrested at the gala had caused 3 major clients to pull their contracts by 9 a.m. Those contracts were worth approximately $12 million. Gerald was scrambling. The company needed a cash injection of $5 million by the end of the week, or they'd have to file for Chapter 11. I picked up my phone and dialed a private number. "Good morning, Arthur," I said. Arthur is my broker at a boutique firm in Manhattan. He handles my aggressive acquisitions portfolio. "Simone," Arthur chuckled, "I saw the news alerts from Atlanta. You certainly know how to make an exit." "I prefer to call it a re-entry," I said, leaning back in my $7,500 chair.
Summit Marketing is drowning. Gerald needs $5 million. I want you to offer him a debt for equity swap, but I want it done through the Gray Rock Holding Company. He shouldn't see my name on any of the initial term sheets.
You want to buy Marcus's employer? Arthur asked, his voice full of, I love this for you, energy.
I don't just want to buy it, Arthur. I want to own the debt, the building, and the very air they breathe. I want a seat on the board, and I want the right of first refusal for all personnel decisions.
It'll cost you about $6,000,050 to do it right, Arthur said.
Wire the funds from the Swiss account, the one Marcus thinks is an educational fund for kids we never had. After I hung up, I felt a surge of energy, but I wasn't done. Marcus had spent years calling me dead weight. He told me I was unmarketable and that I had let myself go because I didn't look like the girls on the Explore page of Instagram. He thought my worth was tied to a dress size. I stood up and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. I was 34. I was carrying some extra weight from the stress of a decade-long marriage to a narcissist who gaslit me every time I reached for a salad. But I wasn't dead weight. I was a masterpiece under construction. I picked up the phone again.
Chef Andre, it's Simone Valentine. I'm ready to start that nutritional program we discussed. 6 months, $3,000 a week, all organic, prepared here in my kitchen. I want the metabolic reset plan.
Next, I called the Pitbull. That's what everyone in Buckhead calls Elias, a celebrity trainer who charges $500 for a 45-minute session. He's the man who trains the Hawks and the Falcons.
Elias? I don't want to look like a fitness model, I told him. I want to look like the woman who owns the gym. I'll see you at 6 p.m.
I spent the rest of the morning moving pieces on the board like a grand master. I wasn't just changing my body, I was changing my entire frequency. Marcus was out there right now, probably sitting in a $200 a night motel room, trying to figure out how to pay his lawyer. He was thinking about how to survive the next week.
I was thinking about how to own the next decade.
Around noon, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was a courier. I walked to the door and signed for a package. Inside was a $2,000 pair of noise-canceling headphones and a letter from my attorney, Jackson. Simone, the note read, the forensic audit is complete. We found the golden goose. Marcus didn't just forge your name on the HELOC, he forged your signature on a $300,000 life insurance policy with a double indemnity clause. He wasn't just trying to leave you, he was planning for you to have an accident. I sat down on my $12,000 velvet sofa and let that sink in. Marcus didn't just want my money, he wanted me gone, permanently. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just put on my new headphones and turned on some Nina Simone. He thought he was the hunter. He thought I was the boring actuary who wouldn't notice a few numbers out of place. But he forgot the first rule of math. The variables can change, but the constants always remain. And the constant in this equation? It's that I'm the one who knows where all the bodies are buried. I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. Somewhere out there, Marcus was telling Tiffany they'd be back on top soon. He was probably promising her a $10,000 shopping spree at Phipps Plaza that he knew he couldn't afford. He didn't realize that I'd just bought the mall he was planning to shop in. Now, y'all, I know what you're thinking. Simone, why don't you just move on? Why keep playing with him? Because Marcus Valentine needs to learn a lesson that only an actuary can teach. He needs to learn that when you bet against the wrong woman, the interest rate on your karma is 100%. And, honey, the bill is coming due.
Now, y'all, if I told you the levels of desperation a man goes through when his credit card finally starts screaming insufficient funds, you wouldn't believe me. It's like their whole personality just starts to leak out of their pores. While I was sitting in my mansion enjoying the quiet, Marcus was experiencing the kind of reality check that no amount of Instagram filters could fix.
He and Tiffany had moved into a $2,000 a month apartment in a part of town Marcus used to call the trenches. For him, it was a fall from grace. For her, it was a disaster. I know this because I still had the login to the smart home camera Marcus had installed in his new place. He used my email to set it up, and the man was too arrogant to ever change the password. I sat in my home office, leaning back in my $7,500 walnut chair, and watched the drama unfold on my $3,000 MacBook Pro.
"Marcus, the air conditioner is making a clicking sound," Tiffany screamed. She was wearing a $200 fast fashion tracksuit that was trying so hard to look like Juicy Couture, but the stitching was already coming apart. "And why is the water pressure so low? I can't wash my hair like this." Marcus was hunched over a kitchen table that looked like it cost $50 at a yard sale. He was surrounded by $300,000 worth of debt notices and legal papers. "Tiffany, shut up about the water," Marcus barked. He hadn't shaved in 3 days, and his $8,500 Tom Ford suit was crumpled in a corner like a dead animal. "I'm trying to fix this. I just need a little bit of liquidity. Gerald is breathing down my neck about those missing consulting fees, and if I don't put $300,000 back into the firm's account by Friday, he's going to call the district attorney." "Well, do something," Tiffany huffed, stomping her foot. "You said you were a mogul. Moguls don't live in apartments with clicking air conditioners." I took a slow sip of my $8 organic green juice and smiled. Marcus wasn't a mogul. He was a narcissist who had finally run out of other people's money to spend. But then I watched him reach into his briefcase and pull out a manila folder. My gray rock exterior didn't crack, but my actuary brain went into overdrive. I recognized those papers. It was an application for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, on the Tuxedo Park mansion. The amount he had typed in was $400,000. Now, y'all know Marcus doesn't own that house. I own it. But Marcus is the kind of man who thinks a signature is just a suggestion. He picked up a pen, a knockoff Mont Blanc he bought for $20 on a street corner, and he started practicing. He was practicing my signature. "I just need her to sign this," Marcus whispered to himself. "The bank already has her name on the old files. If this goes through, the $400,000 hits the account in 48 hours. I pay Gerald back, I get a new car, and Simone can just sue me later. By the time she finds out, I'll have made it all back in the market." He really thought the math was going to work in his favor. It was like watching a child try to play chess with a grandmaster. About an hour later, there was a knock at his door. A man named DeAndre walked in. DeAndre was an old friend of Marcus's from his days before the HBCU, a man who had a notary stamp and a very loose relationship with the law. I'd seen his name in the forensic audit Jackson had sent me. Marcus had paid DeAndre $500 in the past to verify some shady business documents. "You got the papers, Mark?" DeAndre asked, looking around the cramped apartment with a smirk. "Damn, man, you really moved in here? Big Mama would be crying if she saw you living like this. She always said you were too flashy for your own good." "Just sign the damn book, DeAndre," Marcus snapped. He slid the HELOC application across the table. It already had a perfect forgery of my signature on the bottom line. I watched through the camera as DeAndre pulled out his official notary seal. Thump.
The sound of that stamp hitting the paper was the sound of Marcus's prison cell door clicking shut. In the state of Georgia, forgery in the first degree is a felony that carries a sentence of up to 15 years. And when you do it for $400,000, the judge isn't going to be looking for excuses.
There you go, DeAndre said, pocketing a stack of cash, $2,000 in crisp $100 bills that Marcus must have gotten from a payday loan shark. But if this comes back on me, I don't know you, Mark. We haven't spoken since Sunday dinner at Big Mama's 3 years ago.
It won't come back on you, Marcus said, his chest puffing out again. He was already starting to act like the fake baller again now that he had a forged promise of money. Simone is too boring to check the equity statements. She probably doesn't even know how to log into the portal.
Aw, Marcus.
I closed my laptop and stood up. I walked over to my window and looked out at the sprawling lawn of my $5 million estate. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was an automated alert from my high-end security system, Titan Wealth Guard. Alert. Unauthorized attempt to access equity on property ID 7742. IP address tracked to Marcus's apartment. Documents uploaded for verification. The system I'd paid $50,000 to install was doing exactly what it was designed to do. It hadn't blocked the transaction yet because I'd set the trap mode to active. See, if I stopped him now, it was just an attempted fraud. That if I let that $400,000 hit the account, if I let him actually transfer that money to Gerald to cover his tracks, that was a completed felony. That was the trap. I picked up the phone and called Jackson, my attorney.
He did it, I said. My voice was calm, neutral, the perfect gray rock. He just forged my name for $400,000. DeAndre notarized it.
Do you want me to call the bank and freeze it? Jackson asked.
No, I said, watching a hawk circle over the trees in my backyard. I want the money to go through. I want him to feel the weight of that $400,000 in his hand. I want him to go out and buy Tiffany something shiny. I want him to walk into Gerald's office and act like a hero.
Simone, Jackson said, a note of respect in his voice, you're playing a very dangerous game. If he spends that money, it's going to be a headache to get it back from the bank's insurance. I'm an actuary, Jackson. I've already priced the headache, I replied. The cost of the legal fees is approximately $35,000. The value of seeing Marcus in a jumpsuit for the next decade? That's priceless. I hung up and walked down to my kitchen. My private chef, Andre, was there, preparing a $200 sea bass with organic microgreens. "Everything okay, Miss Simone?" he asked, noticing the small smile on my face. "Everything is perfect, Andre," I said. "I'm just watching a man build his own gallows and thinking about how much he's going to hate the view from the top." I sat down to eat my lunch, enjoying every bite of that $200 meal. I thought about Marcus and Tiffany in that clicking apartment celebrating their win with a bottle of $20 sparkling wine. They thought they'd finally outsmarted boring Simone. They had no idea that I wasn't just documenting their crimes. I was archiving them. And y'all, the best part was yet to come, because Marcus was about to find out that when you steal $400,000 from a woman who knows where every cent is buried, you aren't just taking her money. You're signing your own confession in $10,000 increments. Now, y'all, 6 months can change a whole lot more than just the weather in Atlanta. While Marcus was busy burning through that stolen $400,000 trying to keep his fake baller reputation alive, I was in the lab. And when I say lab, I mean I was treating my life like a high-stakes merger. I had gone completely no contact with that narcissist and his flying monkeys. And let me tell you, the silence was the best skincare I ever bought.
The last time we spoke, Marcus had just successfully forged my name on that HELOC, thinking he'd pulled the wool over my eyes. He thought he was slick. He thought he was back on top. But while he was out buying Tiffany a $15,000 Cartier love bracelet to apologize for their temporary move to the trenches, I was waking up at 5 in the morning to the sound of my own discipline. 6 months later, I looked in the mirror and didn't even recognize the woman looking back. I had lost 85 pounds. But it wasn't just about the scale. My skin was glowing thanks to a $3,000 monthly regimen of custom serums and facials at a private clinic in Buckhead. My hair was thick, healthy, and styled into a sleek, expensive bob that screamed, "I have a lawyer on retainer." I wasn't boring Simone anymore. I was becoming S.R. Valentine. I was sitting in the corner office of a glass skyscraper in Midtown, the kind of building where the lobby smells like Santel 33 and the security guards look like they belong on a runway. I was wearing a $3,500 cream-colored knit set from Brunello Cucinelli that hugged my new curves in all the right places. Across from me sat Sarah, the CEO of Elysian Athletics.
Simone, or should I say SR, Sarah said, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany table. The test shots were incredible. Our marketing team hasn't seen engagement like this in years. People are tired of 20-year-old influencers who have never worked a day in their lives. They want a woman with a story. They want a woman who looks like she owns the bank, not just the gym. I picked up the $3,000 Mont Blanc pen, a real one this time, and looked at the contract. The financial porn. The deal was for $2 million for a 12-month global campaign, but that wasn't the part that made me smile. The real win was the 5% equity stake in the company and the creative control clause I'd insisted on. This wasn't just a modeling gig, it was a partnership. The billboards go up in 30 days, Sarah continued. We're starting with a massive takeover in Buckhead, right near Phipps Plaza. We want everyone in this city to see your face. I think that can be arranged, I said. I signed the document with a steady hand. I wasn't nervous. I was an actuary, remember? I had calculated the ROI on this glow-up, and the numbers were looking very, very good. After the meeting, I decided to do something I hadn't done in months. I drove my $200,000 Range Rover over to Phipps Plaza. I wanted to see the world of luxury from my new perspective. As I walked through the mall, I felt the eyes on me. It was different now. Before, I was invisible. Now, men were stopping in their tracks, and women were trying to figure out if I was a celebrity. I stopped by the Tom Ford boutique and picked up a new pair of $700 sunglasses. I didn't even look at the price tag. I just handed them my black card, the one Marcus didn't have the password for. I was heading toward the valet when I saw a sight that almost made me drop my shopping bags. There, at a table in the center of the food court, not even at a nice restaurant, but the food court, was Marcus. He was wearing a suit that used to fit him, but now it looked cheap and shiny. He had a stack of papers spread out in front of him, and he was frantically typing on a laptop that had a cracked screen. Beside him sat Tiffany. She looked exhausted. Her 2 million followers' energy had vanished. She was wearing a $500 tracksuit that looked like it had been washed too many times, and she was scrolling through her phone with a scowl on her face.
Marcus, I'm hungry, Tiffany complained. Her voice carried across the mall like a siren. Can we please go to Nobu? I'm tired of eating this mall food.
Tiffany, for the last time, the card is just being verified by the bank, Marcus hissed. He looked like he hadn't slept in a month. The $400,000 was clearly gone. Probably spent on lawyers, investments that failed, and trying to maintain a lifestyle he didn't own.
I just need to finish this proposal for Gerald. If I don't get this contract signed, we're done."
"You said we were going to be rich," she whined. "You said Simone was the problem, but since she's been gone, we've been broke."
I felt a surge of something, but it wasn't pity. It was a cold, hard satisfaction. I adjusted my $700 Tom Ford glasses and walked right past their table. I didn't hide. I didn't duck. I walked with my head held high, the heels of my $2,000 Gianvito Rossi boots clicking like a countdown on the tile floor.
Marcus looked up. I saw the exact moment he recognized me. His jaw literally dropped. He looked at my face, then down at my body, then at the $3,500 outfit I was wearing. He didn't see a boring librarian. He saw a goddess who looked like she'd just stepped off a private jet. "Simone?" he gasped. He stood up so fast he knocked over his lukewarm soda. "Simone, is that you?"
I stopped and turned slowly. I didn't smile, I didn't frown. I just looked at him through my dark lenses. "It's SR now, Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, controlled. The gray rock had become a diamond. "And you're blocking the walkway. People are trying to get to the high-end stores." You look amazing," he stammered, his eyes darting to my shopping bags from Chanel and Tom Ford. "Wait, how did you— I thought you were struggling. My mother said—" "Your mother says a lot of things, Marcus. Most of them are as fake as that Patek you're still wearing," I replied. I looked at Tiffany, who was staring at me with a mixture of awe and pure, unadulterated jealousy. "Hello, Tiffany. I hope the lip filler settled. It looks a little asymmetrical." Tiffany's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. "Simone, wait!" Marcus stepped toward me, reaching out as if to grab my arm. My elite protection guard, who had been following at a discreet distance, stepped forward immediately. Marcus froze. "I made a mistake, Simone," Marcus whispered, his voice shaking. "Everything has been falling apart. Gerald is crazy, the bank is being difficult. I need someone who knows the math. I need you." I looked at him, this man who had called me dead weight and tried to replace me with a shiny new toy. He was gaslighting himself now, trying to hoover me back into his chaos because he finally realized I was the one who provided the stability he craved. "The math finally caught up to you, Marcus," I said softly. "And I've already balanced my books. There's no room for you in the ledger." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in the middle of a food court, surrounded by his failures. As I handed my valet ticket to the attendant, I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Sarah, the CEO of Elysian Athletics. "Just got word from the firm handling the Summit marketing merger. They've accepted our offer for the debt for equity swap. You officially have a seat on the board, SR. Your first meeting is Monday morning." I smiled as I pulled my Range Rover out onto Peachtree Road. Marcus thought our encounter at the mall was a coincidence. He thought he'd seen the last of me. But he forgot one small thing. Monday morning, I wasn't just going to be his ex-wife. I was going to be his boss. Now, y'all, if there is one thing a narcissist's mother loves more than her own peace of mind, it's being a flying monkey for her golden child. I was sitting in my sunroom, which is basically a glass box overlooking my 2-acre backyard. I'd just finished a session with my $3,000 a week private chef, and I was admiring my new $4,000 cloud sofa from Restoration Hardware. It's the kind of white that stays white because no messy men are allowed to sit on it. I was sipping a cup of herbal tea that cost $40 for a small tin when my phone started vibrating on the marble side table.
I didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. The caller ID said mother-in-law, though I really should change it to head enabler. I let it ring until the very last second. I'm a gray rock, remember? I don't give away my energy for free.
"Hello, Mrs. Valentine," I said, my voice as cool as the air conditioning in this $5 million house.
Simone, darling. Her voice was dripping with that fake honey, the kind that usually precedes a request for a $5,000 loan. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I was so worried after that unfortunate event at the gala. Marcus told me you were going through a bit of a mental breakdown and needed some space.
I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. A mental breakdown? No, honey. I had a mental breakthrough. I'm doing just fine, Mrs. Valentine, I replied. Was there a reason for the call?
"Well, it's about Marcus," she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "He's in a bit of a spot, Simone. He's staying in this, well, it's practically a shack in a very questionable neighborhood. He's so stressed he's lost weight, and not in the good way. He told me you changed the locks on your home. Now, Simone, you know Sunday dinner at Big Mama's isn't the same when the family is divided. It's just not Christian to leave your husband in the cold like this."
It's not our home, Mrs. Valentine. It's my home, held in my private trust. And Marcus isn't in the cold. He's in a $2,000 a month apartment with his new brand partner. If he's stressed, perhaps he should look into some deep breathing exercises, or a job that pays more than his ego can spend.
There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I expected more grace from a Spellman woman, Simone. Marcus is the golden child of this family. He's meant for greatness. He just needs a small bridge to get him through the month. $10,000 would cover his immediate debts and get him back on his feet so he can come back home to you.
"The answer is no," I said. "No, I'm sorry. No, I wish I could. Just a hard, flat no. And I have a meeting to get to. Give my best to Big Mama, but tell her I won't be at Sunday dinner. I'm busy running a kingdom."
I hung up before she could start the waterworks. That's the thing about enablers. They want you to pay for the golden child's mistakes so they don't have to admit they raised a fraud.
But y'all, the real comedy was happening over at Summit Marketing.
Marcus had somehow managed to keep his job, mostly because Gerald, the CEO, was too terrified of the company collapsing to fire his top salesman right before the Elysian Athletics launch. Marcus walked into the office that Monday morning trying to act like he still owned the building. He was wearing a $3,000 suit that I knew he'd bought on a high-interest credit card, trying to hide the fact that he was drowning in the $400,000 hole he dug with that forged HELOC. He didn't know that I was currently sitting in a blacked-out SUV in the parking lot watching the security feed on my tablet. Marcus strutted into Gerald's office, not even knocking. "Gerald, relax. I told you I'd handle the cash flow. The investor you found is going to be thrilled with the numbers I've put together for the Elysian campaign. This is going to be the biggest win in the history of this firm." Gerald looked up from his desk, his face pale. "Marcus, you're lucky you're still here. The only reason the new board hasn't cleared out your desk is because they want the person who knows the Elysian account best to lead the pitch. But I'm telling you, this new majority shareholder isn't playing around. They've already requested a full audit of the marketing spend for the last 3 years. Marcus stiffened, his hand flying to his $800 Superclone watch. "Let them audit. My numbers are solid. Who is this mystery investor anyway? I want to take them to dinner at Chops, maybe drop $5,000 on a bottle of wine to show them how we do things at Summit." "I don't know their name yet," Gerald said, sighing.
They operate through a holding company called the Gray Rock, but they just sent over the creative brief for the Elysian launch. They've already chosen the lead model and the campaign slogan.
Marcus smirked, leaning back in his chair. Probably some skinny 20-year-old with no substance. I'll turn her into a star and take my $200,000 commission. I'll be back in my mansion by the end of the month.
Here's the brief, Gerald said, sliding a thick black folder across the desk. It had the Elysian logo, a sleek gold E on the front.
Marcus opened the folder with the arrogance of a man who thought he'd already won. I watched the screen as he flipped through the pages. He was looking for the budget, looking for the financial porn he could exploit. But then he hit the talent selection page.
His face didn't just go pale. It turned a sickly, grayish yellow. He stared at the high-resolution photo of the lead model. It was a shot from my test session. I was wearing a $2,000 custom athletic set, my skin glowing, my body strong, looking every bit like the woman who could buy and sell him 10 times over. Under the photo, the slogan was printed in bold, gold letters, "Strong enough to lose the dead weight."
What is this? Marcus stammered. His voice was so thin it sounded like paper tearing.
That's S.R. Valentine, Gerald said, not noticing the sweat beads forming on Marcus's forehead. She's the face of the brand. The board says she's the new standard of Atlanta luxury. And Marcus, you're the one who's going to have to present the entire marketing strategy to her in the boardroom on Friday morning.
Marcus dropped the folder. The papers scattered across Gerald's $7,000 rug.
I can't, Marcus whispered. You have to, Gerald snapped. If this pitch fails, the company is bankrupt. And if the company is bankrupt, that $300,000 discrepancy we found in your expense reports goes straight to the authorities. You make this woman happy, Marcus, or you go to jail. It's that simple.
Marcus walked out of that office looking like he'd seen a ghost. He went into the break room and splashed water on his face, gasping for air. He thought he was getting a big break. He thought he was finally going to be the golden child again.
He didn't realize that I'd been the one who handpicked him for this project. I wanted him to be the one to present my success to the board. I wanted him to have to study my face, my body, and my worth for 40 hours a week. I wanted him to have to sell the very woman he tried to destroy.
I closed my tablet and signaled to my driver. As the SUV pulled away from the Summit Marketing Building, I felt a strange sense of calm.
The flying monkeys could call all they wanted. Big Mama could save a seat for me at Sunday dinner until the end of time, but I wasn't the girl who sat at the kids' table anymore. Friday morning was coming, and Marcus was about to find out that when you call a woman dead weight, you better make sure she doesn't turn around and use that weight to crush your entire world.
He thought he was preparing a pitch for a client.
He didn't realize he was actually preparing his own professional obituary.
Now, y'all, if you ever want to see what a man's soul looks like when it's been put through a paper shredder, you just need to look at a forensic audit. Most people think audit and they think of some dry guy in a basement with a green eye shade. But honey, in my world, a forensic audit is a crime scene investigation where the weapon is a $5 ballpoint pen and the victim is the truth.
The last time we checked in, Marcus had just realized I was the face of the very company that was holding his life in its hands. He was sweating through his $3,000 suits, trying to figure out how to pitch a marketing strategy to the woman he called dead weight. But while he was busy practicing his lies in the mirror, I was sitting in the war room. The war room was actually the private office of Jackson, my attorney. It was located on the top floor of a building in Buckhead that looked like it was carved out of a single diamond.
His desk was a custom piece of petrified wood that cost $22,000, and the view of the city was worth at least $10 million. Jackson didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a predator. He was wearing a $4,000 charcoal suit and a watch that cost more than Marcus's entire fake-rich car collection.
Simone, Jackson said, sliding a thick black leather binder across the petrified wood. I've had my team working around the clock. This audit cost you $45,000, but I promise you it was the best money you ever spent.
I opened the binder. The pages were filled with spreadsheets that told the real story of Marcus Valentine.
Let's start with the low-hanging fruit, Jackson said, pointing to a highlighted section. Marcus didn't just embezzle from Summit Marketing. He set up 3 ghost vendors. He's been billing the company for digital consulting services that don't exist. Over the last 2 years, he's funneled $285,000.50 into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands.
I didn't flinch. I just turned the page. And the HELOC?
The $400,000 from the forged home equity line hit his secret Buckhead account on Tuesday, Jackson said, his eyes narrowing. He's already spent $50,000 of it. He bought a pre-owned Rolex for $15,000, paid off Tiffany's credit card debt of $12,000, and spent the rest on a retainer for a criminal defense attorney he thinks he's going to need. I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was a custom blend that cost $80 a pound, served in a delicate porcelain cup worth $200. He's predictable. He gets a little bit of money and he immediately starts trying to look like the man he isn't. But what about the golden goose?
Jackson's face went cold. He flipped to the very back of the binder. This is the part where it gets dark, Simone. We tracked the life insurance policy. He didn't just forge your name on a $1 million policy. He added a double indemnity clause for accidental death. If you were to, say, trip down those marble stairs in your $5 million house, Marcus would walk away with $2 million, tax-free.
The room felt suddenly very quiet. I thought about all the times over the last 6 months Marcus had suggested we go for a hike, or how he'd insist on checking the balcony railing in the middle of the night. My gray rock exterior was solid as a mountain, but inside I was calculating the exact price of a life. Apparently, to Marcus, I was worth exactly $2 million. The math wasn't mathing for him, I said softly. He thought I was the liability, but in his head, I was actually his biggest asset. He just needed me dead to collect on it.
We have enough to bury him, Simone, Jackson said. The forgery, the embezzlement, the insurance fraud, the FBI would take this case in a heartbeat. Why haven't we called them?
Because, I said, looking out at the Atlanta skyline, I want to see if there's a single shred of a man left inside that Tom Ford suit. I want to give him one last chance to do the right thing. Not because I love him, I don't, but because I want his destruction to be entirely his own choice. I reached into my $3,000 Hermes bag and pulled out a burner phone I'd bought for $100 at a convenience store. I typed out a simple email and sent it to Marcus's private address.
To marcusv@summitmktg.com. From Anonymous. Subject: I know where the money went.
I have the audit. I know about the ghost vendors, the forged HELOC, and the insurance policy. You have 24 hours to go to Gerald, confess to the embezzlement, and return the remaining $350,000 to the land trust. Do this, and the evidence disappears. Ignore this, and you'll be eating Sunday dinner in a federal prison for the next 20 years.
You think he'll do it? Jackson asked.
No, I said.
A narcissist never thinks the bridge is actually burning until they feel the heat on their heels. He'll think he can outsmart the anonymous sender. He'll think he can use the Elysian pitch to make enough money to cover his tracks.
And y'all, I was right.
Cut to Marcus, 3 hours later. He was at a high-end steakhouse in Buckhead, the kind of place where a side of mashed potatoes costs $25. He was sitting across from Tiffany, who was complaining about her $500 highlights not being blonde enough. Marcus's phone buzzed. He read the email, and for a split second, I saw his hand shake so hard he almost dropped his $150 ribeye.
"What is it, baby?" Tiffany asked, pouting. "Is it that boring ex-wife again?"
Marcus took a deep breath, his chest puffing out with that fake baller arrogance I knew so well. He looked at the email and a smirk crawled across his face. "It's nothing," Marcus hissed. "Just some bottom feeder trying to shake me down. They think they have something on me, but they don't know who they're dealing with. I'm the golden child. I'm Marcus Valentine. In 48 hours, I'm going to sign a deal that's going to make me untouchable."
He picked up his phone and typed a reply. To Anonymous. From marcus.v@summitmktg.com.
I know where the money went.
I don't know who you are, but you picked the wrong man to mess with. I don't negotiate with trolls. My lawyers will have your IP address by morning. Don't ever contact me again. He hit send with a flourish, then raised his glass of $300 Cabernet. To the future, Tiffany. To being rich and finally getting rid of the dead weight for good. I watched the reply hit my burner phone as I sat in the back of my SUV. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt like an actuary who had just finished a very long, very complicated calculation. He rejected it, I said to the empty car. The one last chance was gone. Marcus had chosen his path, and it led straight into the technical trap I'd spent $50,000 to build. See, by replying to that email, Marcus had just digitally verified that he received the notice. He had acknowledged the crimes. He couldn't claim ignorance anymore. He had just turned a white-collar mistake into willful criminal intent. The math was final now. Marcus thought he was the hunter, toasting his victory at a fancy steakhouse. But he forgot one thing about the Gray Rock. We don't move. We don't shout. We just wait for you to crash against us until you break into pieces. The public event was only a few days away. The projectors were being tested. The loudspeakers were being wired. And Marcus Valentine was walking into a red wedding that he had personally RSVP'd to. Now, y'all, there is a specific kind of arrogance that only a man who is drowning in debt can pull off. It's like they think if they just talk loud enough and wear enough designer logos, the bill collector will get intimidated and walk away. The last time we talked, Marcus had just spit in the face of my "one last chance" email. He thought he was untouchable. He thought the Elysian athletics deal was his ticket back to the big leagues. And honestly, I wanted him to think that. I wanted him so comfortable that he started making the kind of mistakes that leave a trail even a blind man could follow. The setting was a pre-launch corporate mixer at the Whitley in Buckhead. If you know Atlanta, you know the Whitley is where people go to look like they're doing something important. The lobby was filled with the scent of expensive cigars and $100 bottles of cologne. I was sitting in the corner of the lounge, tucked away in a velvet booth that probably cost $12,000 to upholster. I was wearing a $6,000 silk power suit from Bottega Veneta in a shade of emerald green that made my skin look like filtered gold. I had on a pair of $5,000 Gianvito Rossi pumps and a subtle $10,000 diamond tennis bracelet. I looked like money. Not Marcus money, not the loud screaming kind, but the quiet I own the building kind.
I saw Marcus the second he walked in. Y'all, it was tragic. He was trying so hard. He was wearing a $4,000 Versace blazer with the gold buttons gleaming, but he was wearing it over a shirt that I could tell hadn't been professionally pressed. He had that super clone Patek Philippe on his wrist, and he was holding a $50 cocktail like it was a scepter.
He didn't see me at first. He was too busy working the room, which in Marcus speak means cornering people and talking about himself until their eyes glaze over. But then he spotted me from across the lounge. Now, you have to remember, I'd lost 85 pounds. My hair was different, my clothes were different. My entire aura had shifted from helpful housewife to executive predator. From the side, under the dim, expensive lighting of the lounge, he didn't recognize me. He just saw a beautiful, wealthy woman sitting alone with a glass of $25,000 scotch.
I watched him adjust his blazer in the mirror. He smoothed back his hair, put on his Salesman of the Year grin, and started walking toward me.
The math was so simple it was boring. He was going to try to hoover me. He didn't know I was Simone, so he was going to use his standard mystery woman routine.
I couldn't help but notice that you're the only person in this room who looks like they actually belong here, Marcus said as he slid into the booth across from me. He didn't ask, he just took the space. Typical narcissist.
I didn't look up from my phone for a solid 5 seconds. I let him sit in the silence of his own audacity. "Is that right?" I finally said. I kept my voice low, a half octave deeper than the voice he remembered. "Absolutely," Marcus said, leaning in. He smelled like desperation masked by $300 cologne. "My name is Marcus Valentine. I lead the marketing strategy for the biggest launch hitting Atlanta this year. You might have heard of it? Elysian Athletics?"
"I've heard of it," I said, swirling my scotch.
The ice clinked against the glass, a $300 Baccarat crystal tumbler. "I hear the board is demanding."
Marcus scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "The board is a nightmare, but I handle them. It's the face of the brand that's the real problem. S.R. Valentine. She's difficult, high maintenance. Between us, she's a bit of a charity case I'm trying to turn into a star."
I almost choked on my $25,000 scotch. The sheer nerve of this man to call me a charity case while he was currently living on forged HELOC money and payday loans.
"Is that so?" I asked, tilting my head so my hair shadowed half my face. "And what about your personal life, Mr. Valentine? Surely a man of your stature isn't single."
Marcus sighed, the kind of heavy, theatrical sigh he used to use whenever he wanted me to feel guilty for asking him to do the dishes.
"I'm recently separated," he said, his voice dropping to a confessional tone. "My ex-wife, bless her heart, she was just a very small-minded woman. She didn't understand the life I was building. She was stagnant, bitter. She ended up trying to ruin me because she couldn't keep up. It's the classic story. I was the engine and she was just the dead weight."
He was literally using the same lines he'd used on Tiffany. He was rewriting our entire 10-year history in a 2-minute elevator pitch. He was gaslighting a woman he didn't even realize was the woman he was talking about.
"That sounds exhausting," I said, playing the gray rock to perfection. I didn't get angry, I didn't defend myself. I just let him keep digging the hole.
"It was," Marcus said, eyes bright with the thrill of the catch. "But looking at you, I can tell you're different. You're a high-frequency woman. I'm looking for an investor for a private project, something outside of Summit Marketing. With your grace and my vision, we could own this city."
He reached across the table and tried to put his hand over mine. I pulled my hand back to pick up my glass before he could touch me.
I don't invest in visions, Mr. Valentine, I said. I invest in receipts, and from what I hear, your receipts are currently being scrutinized by some very serious people.
Marcus froze. The fake baller mask slipped for a fraction of a second. What do you mean?
I mean that Atlanta is a small town, I said, standing up. I smoothed out my $6,000 Bottega Veneta trousers. And the golden child usually loses his shine once the lights of a forensic audit get turned on.
Wait, Marcus stood up, almost knocking over his drink. Who are you? How do you know about the audit? I turned back and gave him a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It was the kind of smile Big Mama gives you right before she catches you in a lie.
I'm the person who decides if you have a job on Monday morning, I said. I'll see you at the final pitch, Marcus. Make sure your tie is straight. It's going to be a very long day.
I walked away without looking back. I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my head. I knew he was standing there, heart racing, trying to put the pieces together. He was probably thinking I was some new board member or a consultant he defended. He still hadn't realized I was the dead weight he'd been dragging for a decade.
I walked out to the valet, where my $200,000 Range Rover was idling. As I pulled out onto Peachtree, I felt a sense of calm that was almost spiritual.
Marcus had tried to hoover me. He'd tried to pull a new woman into his web of lies, not realizing he was talking to the one who had already escaped it. He'd insulted me, lied about our marriage, and tried to steal more money, all in the span of 15 minutes. But y'all, the best part was yet to come. Monday was the final pitch. It was the day Marcus thought he was going to save his career and his reputation. He was going to walk into that boardroom with his shiny slides and his fake watch, ready to sell the world on the new face of Elysian athletics. He didn't realize that I wasn't just the model. I wasn't just the investor. I was the one who had already written the ending to his story. And honey, there wasn't a happily ever after in sight for Marcus Valentine. Now, y'all, we've reached that part of the story where the fork in the road is staring you right in the face. You know how it is. Sometimes the Lord gives you a window of grace before the roof falls in. My big mama used to say, Simone, always give a fool enough rope to pull himself up, but don't be surprised when he uses it to tie his own noose. The last time we talked, Marcus was standing in the middle of a Buckhead lounge, sweating through his $3,000 suit because he realized a mystery woman knew about his dirty laundry. He didn't know that woman was me, but he knew the ground was shaking. It was Thursday afternoon, less than 24 hours before the big red wedding reveal at the Elysian launch. I was sitting in my home library, the one with the $12,000 floor-to-ceiling built-ins made of African mahogany. I had my expert ally with me, a man named David, who everyone in the tech world calls the Ghost. I paid him a retainer of $50,000 just to ensure that when I pulled the trigger, there wouldn't be a single digital footprint leading back to me. David was sitting at my $7,500 reclaimed walnut desk, his fingers flying across a laptop that cost $6,000 and looked like it could hack into the Pentagon.
The technical trap is set, Simone, David said, his voice as dry as a desert. I've synchronized the projectors at the gala. The moment the brand reveal button is pressed, it won't be the marketing slides. It'll be the forensic audit, the images of the forged HELOC, and the recording of the notary confessing. I've also locked the firm's server. Marcus can't delete a single file.
I nodded, sipping a glass of iced tea made from leaves that cost $100 a tin. And the insurance policy?
The life insurance fraud is the cherry on top, David said, sliding a tablet toward me. He actually logged in this morning to check the double indemnity status. He's greedy, Simone. He isn't just trying to cover his tracks. He's still hoping for a payday.
I looked at the screen. Marcus had been active. He was desperate. And a desperate narcissist is a dangerous thing.
One last thing, I said, my gray rock composure as solid as the marble in my foyer. I want to give him one last chance to save himself. Not because he deserves it, but because I need the record to show I offered him a way out.
I picked up my phone, my real one this time, and I unblocked Marcus for exactly 5 minutes. I dialed his number.
He picked up on the first ring.
"Simone?" he gasped. I could hear the background noise of a busy street. He sounded like he was running. "Simone, is that you? Listen, I don't have time for your drama. I'm in the middle of the biggest deal of my life." "Marcus," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I'm calling because I want to give you a choice. I know about the $350,000 you took. I know about the forged signature on the house, and I know about the policy." The silence on the other end was so loud I could practically hear his heart hammering against his ribs.
"I don't know what you're talking about," he hissed. The gaslighting was automatic with him. It was his default setting. "You're delusional. This is exactly why I left you. You're trying to sabotage me because you're bitter and stagnant." "Marcus, listen to me," I said, ignoring the insult. "Go to Gerald's office right now. Tell him you made a mistake with the consulting fees. Return the remaining money from the HELOC to the trust. If you do that, and you sign a full confession for the forgery, I will let you walk away. I won't call the feds. You'll be broke, but you'll be free."
"Free?" Marcus laughed, and it was that jagged, arrogant laugh that used to make me feel so small. "Simone, you really think you have power? I'm the golden child. Tomorrow morning, the world is going to see you on those billboards, and they're going to associate your face with my marketing genius. I'm going to be a millionaire by noon. You're just the help I used to get there." "Is that your final answer?" I asked. I felt like a judge at a sentencing hearing.
"My final answer is that you need to stay in your lane," Marcus snapped. "And by the way, I saw that investor friend of yours at the lounge. Tell her she's wasting her time. I'm untouchable. Don't call this number again unless it's to tell me you've moved the rest of your junk out of my house."
Click. He hung up on me. He actually hung up on his last lifeline.
I sat there for a moment, looking at the phone. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even surprised. That's the thing about a narcissist. Their ego is a cage they build themselves, and they'll sit in it while the building burns rather than admit someone else has the key.
He rejected it, I said to David. "Then we're go for tomorrow night?" David asked.
"We're going," I said. "Ensure the technical trap is redundant. I want it on the big screens, the personal tablets of the board members, and the live stream. No one gets to look away." I stood up and walked over to my window. I could see the church mothers walking into the chapel down the street for their Thursday evening prayer circle. I thought about how many times I'd sat in those pews, praying for my marriage, praying for Marcus to be the man he pretended to be at Sunday dinner. I realized then that I wasn't praying for him. I was praying for a ghost. I went to my closet and pulled out the dress I'd chosen for the gala. It was a custom piece from Schiaparelli that cost $20,000. It was black, structured, and looked like armor. I spent the rest of the evening checking my receipts. The financial porn? I had the forensic audit, $45,000, the toxicology report from the supplements Marcus had tried to get me to take, $8,000, and the quitclaim deed he'd tried to forge. Priceless. I felt a strange sense of peace. I'd set the boundaries. I'd gone no contact until the moment of grace.
I'd played the gray rock until I became the mountain he was about to crash into.
As I laid out my $10,000 diamond tennis bracelet, my phone buzzed. It was a flying monkey, Marcus's sister.
Simone, Marcus said you called him crying and begging for him to come back. Just move on, sweetie. He is with a woman who matches his level now. Don't be that bitter ex.
I didn't reply. I just deleted the message and turned off my phone. Tomorrow was the red wedding reveal. The projectors were ready. The FBI was on standby, thanks to a $10,000 private security consultant who had pre-vetted the evidence for them. Marcus thought he was walking into his coronation. He thought he was going to stand on that stage, look at my face on the screen, and take credit for my life. He didn't realize that the technical trap wasn't just about the money. It was about the truth. And in Atlanta, the truth is the one thing you can't buy with a forged check. He thought he won, but he forgot one small thing. I'm an actuary, and I've already calculated the cost of his downfall. And honey, the interest rate just went up. Now, y'all, Friday morning in Atlanta is a special kind of chaotic. You've got the commuters fighting for their lives on the connector, the church ladies heading to early morning prayer, and then you've got men like Marcus Valentine, who wake up thinking they actually own the sunrise. The last time we checked in on Marcus, he just hung up on his last lifeline. He'd looked a gift horse in the mouth and spat on it because his ego was too big to fit in the room. He spent the night in that $2,000 a month apartment, probably staring at the ceiling and dreaming of the millions he thought were coming his way. When the sun hit the skyline that morning, Marcus was feeling himself. He'd used a chunk of that forged $400,000 to put a down payment on a new lease, a white BMW M8 competition that cost him approximately $130,000. He didn't have the title, and the interest rate was probably higher than his credit score, but to Marcus, if it looked rich, it was rich. He spent 45 minutes in front of the mirror, putting on a suit from Canali that set him back $3,500. He strapped on that $15,000 Rolex he'd bought with the stolen equity and splashed on enough Creed Aventus cologne to choke a horse. It cost him $450 for the bottle, and he used it like it was body spray. "Today is the day, Tiffany," Marcus said, checking his veneers in the mirror. Tiffany was still in bed, probably dreaming of her next $10,000 shopping spree. By noon, the board at Summit is going to realize I'm the only thing keeping this firm afloat. I'm going to walk into that boardroom, present the SR Valentine campaign, and demand a $500,000 bonus. He grabbed his $3,000 leather briefcase, hopped into that white BMW, and cranked the music. He was driving toward Buckhead, heading to the Summit marketing offices for the final pitch. He was cruising down Peachtree Road, feeling like the golden child everyone told him he was back at the HBCU. But y'all, pride doesn't just go before a fall. In Atlanta, pride goes before a 40-foot digital reveal. As he approached the intersection near Phipps Plaza, the heart of luxury in this city, the traffic slowed down. Marcus didn't mind. He wanted people to see him in the car. He adjusted his $700 Gucci sunglasses and looked up at the massive digital billboard that towers over the intersection. Usually, it was advertising some high-end tequila or a new law firm. But this morning, it was different. This screen flickered, the colors shifting into a deep, expansive shade of emerald green. Then, the image hit. It was me. But it wasn't the Simone he remembered. It wasn't the woman who used to pack his lunches and make sure his shirts were pressed for Sunday dinner. The image was a high-resolution, crystal-clear shot of SR Valentine. I was wearing a $20,000 custom Schiaparelli dress that looked like it was made of liquid midnight.
My skin was glowing like it had been kissed by the sun, and my eyes, y'all, the photographer caught a look in my eyes that was so cold it could have frozen the Sahara. I looked powerful. I looked wealthy. I looked like a woman who didn't even remember Marcus's name.
Across the bottom of the billboard, in bold, gold lettering that cost the brand $50,000 just for the font licensing, were the words, "Stronger without the dead weight."
Marcus's foot slipped off the brake. The BMW jerked forward, nearly tapping the bumper of a $250,000 Bentley in front of him. His heart started thudding against his ribs like a trapped bird.
"No," he whispered. "No, that's not... She couldn't."
He looked at the billboard again. The digital display looped, showing a video snippet of me walking toward the camera, tossing a heavy, rusted iron chain, the dead weight, onto the floor. The sound didn't play, but you could feel the impact. People in the cars around him were pointing. Pedestrians were stopping to take pictures. It was the most striking thing on Peachtree Road. It was a declaration of war disguised as a fitness and lifestyle ad.
Marcus's phone started vibrating in the center console. It was a flying monkey, his sister. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. His mother. Ignored. Then the car's Bluetooth screen lit up with a name that made his stomach drop. Gerald, CEO. Marcus hit the button with a shaking finger. "Hey, Gerald, I'm just 5 minutes away. Stuck in a little traffic, but I've got the slides ready and—" "Marcus, shut up!" Gerald's voice barked through the $12,000 Bowers & Wilkins speakers. He sounded like he was vibrating with rage. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" "Gerald, look, I can explain the S.R. Valentine thing. She's just—" "You can explain it to the board," Gerald interrupted. "And you can explain it to the legal team from Elysian Athletics who are currently sitting in my conference room asking why our lead marketer is the man their brand ambassador just publicly called dead weight on a billboard over the busiest street in the city. The S.R. Valentine campaign just went viral, Marcus. In 10 minutes, every blog from here to London is going to be talking about the underestimated woman and the man who tried to hold her back. Gerald, I'm the one who knows her. I can fix this." "Fix it?" Marcus, the brand just sent over a list of mandatory termination clauses. They don't want a fake baller associated with their image. They want the woman on that billboard. And she told them she won't step foot in this building until you're gone. The line went dead. Marcus sat there, paralyzed as the light turned green. People behind him started honking. A man in a beat-up truck yelled, "Move that least piece of junk, buddy." But Marcus couldn't move. He was staring at my face. 40 feet of me, looking down at him with nothing but pity. He realized then that the $400,000 he'd stolen wasn't going to save him. The $3,000 suit wasn't going to protect him. The golden child wasn't just losing his shine, he was being erased. He looked down at his $15,000 Rolex. The second hand was ticking away, and every tick felt like a $300,000 mistake. He finally floored it, peeling out and heading toward the Summit Marketing Building. He was panicked, his mind racing through $1,000 worth of lies, trying to find one that would stick. He thought if he could just get to Gerald, if he could just hoover the board one last time, he could keep his job.
He didn't realize that when I'd bought the debt for the company, I hadn't just bought the building, I'd bought the right to see his face the moment the security guards handed him a cardboard box for his things.
He thought he was going to a meeting, but y'all, I was at the office already, sitting in the high-back leather chair in the boardroom that cost $8,000. I had a $5,000 bottle of Louis XIII cognac waiting on the table, and 2 officers from the Atlanta Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit were standing by the door. Marcus thought he was the star of the show. He didn't realize he was just the before picture in my after story. As he pulled into the parking deck, he saw my blacked-out SUV sitting in his reserved spot. He knew then the math had finally, officially hit 0.
Now, y'all, if I could have bottled the smell of pure, unadulterated panic that Marcus brought into that boardroom, I'd be even richer than I already am. It's a scent that's 1 part expensive cologne and 3 parts I'm about to go to jail. And honey, it was filling the hallways of Summit Marketing before he even stepped off the elevator.
The last time we talked, Marcus was speeding toward the office in a leased BMW he couldn't afford, staring at a 40-foot version of my face on a billboard. He thought he could still talk his way out of it. He thought he could walk into that boardroom and Marcus Valentine his way back into a paycheck.
I was already sitting at the head of the table.
This boardroom was the pinnacle of corporate Atlanta. The table was a $22,000 piece of frosted glass and steel, and the chairs were 12-way adjustable leather pieces that cost $2,500 each. I was sitting in the power seat, the one facing the floor-to-ceiling windows. I was wearing a custom Schiaparelli suit that cost $20,000. It was black, with gold-dipped anatomical buttons that looked like little pieces of art. My hair was pulled back so tight it made my cheekbones look like they were carved out of $500 marble. I wasn't just the model on the billboard, I was the ghost in the machine.
Gerald, the CEO, was sitting to my right. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since Sunday dinner. To my left were 2 men in dark, boring suits who didn't say a word. Those were the officers from the financial crimes unit I'd paid a private consultant $10,000 to brief on the case.
The double doors burst open.
Marcus didn't just walk in, he exploded into the room. He was sweating through his $3,500 Canali suit, and his tie was slightly crooked, a sin he'd never usually commit. He was clutching his $3,000 leather briefcase like it was a shield.
Gerald, thank God you're here, Marcus panted. He didn't even look at the police officers. He didn't even look at me. He was in full narcissist mode, eyes locked on the man who controlled his salary. The billboard, it's a mistake, it's a glitch. The agency used a placeholder image of Simone. I can fix it. I've already drafted a cease and desist.
I didn't say a word. I just leaned back in my $2,500 chair and watched him spin. This is the Grey Rock method in its purest form, y'all. When you don't give them an audience, their show starts to fall apart.
Marcus, Gerald said. His voice was tired. Sit down.
No, Gerald, you don't understand. Simone is behind this. She's trying to sabotage the Elysian launch because she's bitter. She's a narcissist, Gerald. She's trying to steal my spotlight.
The audacity was truly a sight to behold. He was gaslighting the whole room, projecting every one of his sins onto me in a $3,500 suit.
Marcus, I said. My voice was low, calm, and cut through his rambling like a knife through butter. Sit down.
Marcus finally turned his head. He looked at me, and I saw the moment the reality hit him. He saw the Schiaparelli suit. He saw the $5,000 bottle of Louis XIII cognac sitting on the table next to my $200 crystal glass. Most importantly, he saw that I wasn't flinching. He sat. He didn't have a choice. His knees looked like they'd turned to water.
We aren't here to talk about your marketing genius, Marcus, I said, sliding a tablet across the frosted glass table. It was a $3,000 iPad Pro with a custom leather cover. We're here to talk about the math, and as an actuary, I find your math offensive.
I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus hissed. He tried to puff out his chest. I've brought in $10 million for this firm.
No, Marcus, Gerald interrupted, looking at a set of papers. You've lost this firm $12 million in contracts this week because the world thinks we employ a man who calls his majority shareholder dead weight. But that's the small stuff.
I tapped a button on my remote. The massive 85-inch 4K screen at the end of the room, a piece of tech that cost $15,000, flickered to life. Instead of the Elysian logo, a spreadsheet appeared. "This is the Grey Rock Holding Company's audit," I said. "Every brand mention, every dollar amount, every ghost vendor. It's all here. Let's look at the $300,000 you funneled into the Cayman account, shall we? Or maybe we should talk about the $400,000 HELOC you forged my name on to buy that white BMW sitting in the parking deck." Marcus's jaw dropped. That was a business investment. I was going to pay it back.
With what, Marcus? I asked. The $2 million you were hoping to collect from my accidental death? The policy with the double indemnity clause you forged my signature on 3 months ago? The room went stone-cold silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop humming. Marcus looked at the 2 police officers. He finally realized they weren't board members. He started to stand up, his face turning a sickly shade of gray.
"This is a setup! Simone, you can't do this! We're family! Think about Big Mama! Think about our history!"
Our history is a series of $2,000 lies and $10,000 thefts, Marcus, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. And as for Big Mama, I've already sent her the forensic audit. She said to tell you that the church mothers are praying for your soul, but they aren't coming to bail you out. The lead officer, a man who looked like he'd seen 1,000 fake ballers come and go, stepped forward. He pulled a pair of stainless steel handcuffs from his belt. The sound of that metal clinking was the most beautiful music I'd heard in a decade. "Marcus Valentine," the officer said, "you're under arrest for forgery in the 1st degree, embezzlement, and insurance fraud." "Wait, no, Gerald, do something." Marcus was screaming now. He was being pulled out of his $2,500 chair. His $3,000 briefcase fell to the floor, spilling out a stack of super clone luxury watch brochures and a receipt for a $5,000 dinner he'd charged to the company. Tiffany chose that exact moment to burst into the room. She was wearing a $2,000 Versace dress she'd bought with the forged HELOC money, and her lip filler was looking even more asymmetrical in the harsh office lighting. "Marcus, why aren't you answering your—" She stopped, her eyes wide as she saw the handcuffs. "Tiffany, call the lawyer! Call Jackson!" Marcus yelled as they led him toward the door. I looked at Tiffany and gave her a small, polite smile. "Jackson is my lawyer, honey. I'm the one paying his $50,000 retainer. You might want to check the balance on that Cartier love bracelet Marcus bought you. I've already reported it as a fraudulent purchase to the bank." Tiffany looked like she'd been slapped. She looked at Marcus, then back at me, and then she did exactly what I knew a narcissist's enabler would do. She turned around and walked out the door before the police could ask her any questions. Marcus was dragged out of the boardroom, his screams echoing down the hall of the firm he thought he owned. Gerald sat there, head in his hands, staring at the $22,000 table. "Simone," Gerald whispered, "what happens now?" I stood up, smoothing out my Schiaparelli jacket. I picked up my crystal glass and took one last sip of the $5,000 cognac. "Now?" I said, looking out at the city where I was finally the main character. "Now I'm going to go to lunch, and then I'm going to decide if I want to keep this firm or if I want to sell it for parts." I walked out of that building and into the bright Atlanta sun. My black SUV was waiting.
As I drove away, I saw the news helicopters circling the Phipps Plaza billboard. My face was everywhere. The dead weight was gone.
But y'all, as I looked at my phone, a new notification popped up. It wasn't from Marcus. It wasn't from the bank. It was an email from a private investigator I'd hired to look into Marcus's mother.
"You were right, Simone," the subject line read. "The golden child wasn't the only one with a secret account." I leaned back in the seat and smiled. Marcus was in handcuffs, but the real mystery was just beginning.
Y'all, if there is one sound in this world that's sweeter than a choir on Sunday morning, it's the crisp, metallic click of a pair of Smith & Wesson handcuffs closing around the wrists of a man who thought he was untouchable.
The last time we were in that boardroom, Marcus was being read his rights while his Salesman of the Year trophies sat on the table looking like a joke. The air in the room was thick with the scent of his $450 Creed Aventus cologne, but it couldn't mask the smell of a fake baller who'd finally run out of luck.
Marcus was standing there, his hands pulled behind his back, making his $3,500 Canali suit jacket bunch up in a way that looked cheap. His face was a mess, snot, tears, and that ugly purple shade of rage.
"Simone, tell them it's a mistake," Marcus wailed. He was looking at me with those puppy dog eyes he used to use whenever he forgot our anniversary or lost another $5,000 in a bad crypto investment. "We're a team. You're my wife. You can't let them do this to me."
I didn't say a word. I just sat there in my $2,500 leather chair, crossing my legs so he could see the red soles of my $2,000 Christian Louboutin pumps. I picked up my crystal glass and took a slow, deliberate sip of the $5,000 Louis XIII cognac. It burned on the way down, but in the best way possible. "I'm not your wife, Marcus," I said, my voice as steady as the foundation of a church mother's faith. "I'm your majority shareholder, and as for being a team, I don't play on teams with people who forge my name for $400,000. That's when Tiffany decided to make her final stand. She was standing by the door, clutching her $2,000 Versace handbag like it was a life raft. Her lip filler was actually trembling. She looked at Marcus, then she looked at the police, and then she looked at me with a look of pure, unadulterated venom.
"You think you're so much better than me?" Tiffany spat. She stepped further into the room, her $500 fast fashion heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood. "You're just a bitter old woman who couldn't keep her man, so you had to buy a company and call the cops just to feel powerful? You're pathetic, Simone."
Now, y'all, I had to take a breath, because the audacity was truly breathtaking.
"Tiffany, honey," I said, leaning forward into the light. "Bless your heart. You really think this is about keeping a man? I didn't lose a man. I lost a liability. I lost 200 pounds of dead weight that was dragging down my credit score." "He loves me," she screamed. "He bought me a $15,000 Cartier love bracelet. He bought me a $5,000 wardrobe. He treats me like the queen I am."
The lead officer, the one holding Marcus's arm, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, about that jewelry and those clothes, if they were purchased with the funds from the forged $400,000 HELOC, they're considered proceeds of a crime. We are going to need you to step into the hall with my partner to document those assets for seizure."
Tiffany's face went from angry to terrified in approximately 0.5 seconds. "What? No! This is mine! He gave it to me!"
"He gave you stolen money, Tiffany," I said, standing up slowly. I smoothed out the front of my $20,000 Schiaparelli suit. "And since I'm the one who actually owns the equity that money was stolen from, I've already filed a claim to have those items returned to the estate.
That bracelet on your wrist? It's mine. Those shoes? Mine. Even that dress you're wearing to try and look like old money? It's coming back to me too." "You can't do that!" she shrieked. "I already did," I said. "I'm an actuary, remember? I don't just guess what's going to happen, I make sure of it." Marcus started struggling again as the officers began to lead him toward the door. "Simone, please, think about Big Mama. Think about Sunday dinner. How am I supposed to explain this to the family?" "You won't have to," I replied. "I've already called Big Mama. She told me to tell you that she's saving your seat at the table, but she's giving your portion of the pot roast to the neighbor's dog. She said she doesn't break bread with thieves, even if she did change their diapers." Marcus let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. He looked like a broken man, but I didn't feel a single ounce of pity. I remembered the nights I sat at home, wondering why the math didn't add up. I remembered him calling me stagnant and fat while he was spending $10,000 on hotel rooms with this girl. As they dragged him past me, he tried to spit on my shoes. The officer jerked him back and Marcus stumbled, his $3,500 suit sleeve catching on the doorframe and ripping a jagged hole in the shoulder. "Get him out of here," Gerald, the CEO, said from the corner of the room. He looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. "And Tiffany, don't bother coming back for your desk. Security has already cleared it out. You'll find your things in a $5 trash bag at the front desk." Tiffany looked at Marcus, the man she thought was her golden ticket, and I saw the exact moment she realized he was nothing but a fake baller in a torn suit. She didn't even say goodbye. She just turned and ran toward the elevator, trying to hide her face from the staff who were all standing in the hallway with their phones out recording the whole thing. The perp walk was glorious. The entire office of Summit Marketing was lined up in the hallway. These were the people Marcus had looked down on for years. These were the people he'd bragged to about his $10 million wins. They watched in silence as the golden child was led out in handcuffs, his head hanging low, his shiny veneers reflecting the fluorescent lights one last time. I walked to the boardroom door and stood there, watching the elevator doors close on him. "Simone," Gerald said, walking up behind me, "I don't know what to say. The firm is, well, we're in a lot of trouble. With Marcus gone and the fraud exposed, our reputation is in the gutter." "Not necessarily, Gerald," I said, turning to look at him. "The world loves a redemption story, and right now, I'm the best story in Atlanta. I'm the woman who lost the dead weight and found a fortune. If you play your cards right, Summit Marketing can be the firm that helped me do it."
What are you saying?
I'm saying I'm keeping my seat on the board, and I'm saying we're going to relaunch the Elysian campaign on Monday morning. But we're doing it my way. No more fake rich nonsense. No more $2,000 lunches on the company dime. We're going to show people what real power looks like. Gerald nodded, looking relieved. "Whatever you want, Simone. You're the boss." I walked back to the $22,000 glass table and picked up my $3,000 iPad Pro. I had one more thing to do. I looked at the final receipts folder. Marcus was headed to the precinct. Tiffany was headed to the unemployment line. But as I scrolled through the forensic audit one last time, my eyes caught a transaction I'd missed before. It was a transfer of $50,000. Not to Tiffany, not to the Cayman account. It was a wire transfer to a private account held by Marcus's mother. I leaned back in the chair and tapped my chin. Marcus was a narcissist, but he was a lazy one. He didn't do anything without a push. And $50,000 is a lot of money for a flying monkey to receive just for being a good mother. I pulled out my phone and dialed my private investigator. "Jackson, it's Simone.
Marcus is in custody, but I need you to dig deeper into the head enabler. Follow that $50,000 wire. I want to know exactly what Mrs. Valentine was being paid to keep quiet about."
The math was finally starting to get interesting. Marcus thought he was the one with the secrets, but he forgot that in a family of vipers, even the golden child is just a pawn.
I looked out the window at the Buckhead skyline. The red wedding was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. And y'all, I had a feeling that Marcus wasn't the only Valentine who was about to find out that the truth costs a lot more than $10,000 to bury.
Now, y'all, there is a specific kind of quiet that settles over your life once the sirens fade away and the dust starts to sit. It's not the lonely kind of quiet I used to feel when Marcus was out networking until 3 in the morning. No, this was the quiet of a woman who had finally cleared the ledger.
The last time we spoke, Marcus was being led out of the Summit Marketing boardroom in handcuffs, his $3,500 suit ruined, and his reputation in the gutter. Tiffany had vanished like a ghost once she realized the Cartier and the Versace were being seized as evidence. But while Marcus was sitting in a holding cell smelling like regret and holding cell floor cleaner, I was sitting in Jackson's office finishing the job.
Jackson's office was quiet, save for the sound of a $2,000 espresso machine whirring in the corner. I was sitting in a chair upholstered in buttery Italian leather that probably cost $5,000, wearing a simple but sharp $6,000 silk dress from the row.
"The plea deal is off the table, Simone," Jackson said, sliding a folder across his $22,000 petrified wood desk. The district attorney saw the evidence of the life insurance forgery, the double indemnity clause. That moved this from simple white-collar theft to something much more sinister. They're looking at a 5-year sentence in a federal facility.
I took a slow sip of my espresso from a $300 porcelain cup. 5 years. That was the math I'd been waiting for.
"And the assets?" I asked.
"We've liquidated everything," Jackson replied, checking his $3,000 iPad Pro. "The white BMW was returned to the dealership. We recovered the $30,000 down payment. We've seized the Rolex, the Tiffany bracelets, and the designer wardrobe. After legal fees, we're returning $385,000.50 to your land trust." I leaned back, feeling the weight of the decade finally lift. It wasn't about the money, though $385,000 is a lovely divorce gift to myself. It was about the fact that Marcus was finally facing a reality he couldn't charm his way out of. "He's calling it his 5-year plan to his cellmates, apparently," Jackson chuckled. "He's telling anyone who will listen that he's going to come out and write a book about his unjust downfall. He still thinks he's the hero of the story."
"Narcissists don't change their script, Jackson," I said. "But what about the wire transfer to his mother, the $50,000? Jackson's expression shifted. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. "That's where it gets interesting. That $50,000 wasn't a gift. It was a payoff. It turns out Mrs. Valentine has been holding on to his secret for 20 years. Marcus never actually graduated from that HBCU he brags about. He was expelled in his senior year for, surprise, surprise, forging a professor's signature on a grade change. His mother paid $40,000 to keep it out of the alumni records so he could keep his golden child image at Sunday dinner." I put the cup down. The clink of the porcelain sounded like a gavel hitting the bench. "So the whole foundation was a lie," I whispered. "The degrees, the salesman of the year pedigree, it was all built on a $40,000 bribe."
"Exactly," Jackson said. "And because he used stolen funds from your trust to pay his mother back for that loan, we flagged her account too. The feds are questioning her about money laundering as we speak. Now, y'all, I'm not a petty woman, but I had to take a moment to appreciate the irony. Mrs. Valentine spent 20 years protecting a lie, only for that lie to be the very thing that brought the feds to her doorstep. The flying monkey was finally having her wings clipped. I left the office and walked out into the Buckhead sun. I didn't head back to the mansion. I drove my $200,000 Range Rover over to the new estate I just purchased in Tuxedo Park. It was a $7 million architectural masterpiece with a 10-car garage and a backyard that felt like a private park. As I walked through the empty rooms, I could hear the echoes of my own future. The master suite. I'd already commissioned a custom-built walk-in closet for $150,000. No room for super clone watches or fake baller suits. Just my collection of Hermes and Chanel. This would be the headquarters of the Grey Rock Holding Company. I was already looking at acquiring 2 more distressed firms. The peace. No one was going to call me dead weight here. No one was going to gaslight me over a Sunday dinner. I stood on the balcony, looking at the trees. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a news app. Breaking. Former Buckhead executive Marcus Valentine sentenced to 5 years for multi-million-dollar fraud and forgery. I didn't click on the article. I didn't need to read the comments. I already knew the ending. Marcus was going to spend the next 5 years in a 200-square-foot cell wearing a jumpsuit that didn't have a designer label in sight. He'd have plenty of time to work on his 5-year plan. Me? My plan was already in motion. I'd just signed a contract for another $5 million to expand the Elysian Athletics line globally. I was healthy, I was wealthy, and for the first time in my life, I was truly no contact with the chaos. But y'all, the final receipt wasn't in the courtroom. It was waiting for me in the mail when I got home. A small, handwritten envelope from Big Mama. I opened it expecting a lecture. Instead, it was a single photo of her and the church mothers at Sunday dinner. Marcus's chair was gone. In its place was a giant vase of flowers I'd sent her. $2,000 worth of white lilies. Simone, the note read. The math always adds up in the dark. Thank you for bringing the light. P.S. Don't forget to bring that nice lawyer to dinner next week. He looks like he actually knows how to say grace. I smiled and tucked the note into my $3,000 clutch. Marcus thought he was the one who held the family together. He thought he was the prize. But he forgot that a golden child is only worth something as long as the person holding the gold doesn't decide to spend it. And honey, I just spent every last cent of him.
Now, y'all, there is a certain kind of sunshine you only get when your conscience is clear and your bank account is heavy. I'm talking about that Mediterranean sun, the kind that doesn't just hit your skin, it warms your very soul.
1 year has passed since I watched the elevator doors close on Marcus Valentine in handcuffs. 1 year since the golden child was shipped off to a federal facility to start his 5-year sentence for being a thief with a bad tailor. And let me tell you, honey, life on the other side of that drama is better than a front row seat at a sold-out gospel concert. I was sitting on the deck of a yacht I'd chartered in Saint-Tropez for $300,000 for the week. I named the boat the Grey Rock because I'm petty like that. I was wearing a silk caftan from Valentino that cost $6,800 and a pair of oversized Chanel sunglasses that set me back $1,200. My skin was glowing, not from a bottle, but from the lack of narcissist-induced stress. I was sipping a glass of Chateau d'Yquem. It's a dessert wine that costs $1,500 a bottle, and looking out at the turquoise water.
My phone, a custom gold-plated device worth $5,000, started vibrating on the teak table.
I didn't recognize the number, but the caller ID said, "Inmate Collect Call."
I took a slow sip of my wine, adjusted my $6,800 caftan, and hit speaker.
You have a collect call from an inmate at the Reedsville Federal Facility, the automated voice said. Do you wish to accept the charges of $3.50?
I chuckled. $3.50? Marcus is still trying to spend my money. I hit the button to accept.
Simone? Simone, is that you? His voice sounded like it had been dragged through gravel. There was no Salesman of the Year polish left, no Buckhead swagger, just the hollow sound of a man who realized he wasn't the main character anymore.
It's S.R. Valentine, Marcus, I said. I kept my voice as cool as the ocean breeze. You have exactly 60 seconds before I get bored. Make it count.
Simone, listen, it's bad in here. The food it's not even fit for a dog. And my lawyer says the feds are looking at my mother's accounts now. They're talking about seizing her house, Big Mama's house. You can't let that happen. You have the money. Just $50,000 would settle her debt. You owe me that much for the 10 years I gave you.
I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing out loud. The audacity was still there, even in a jumpsuit.
Marcus, honey, I said, leaning back in my $500,000 yacht rental. The only thing you gave me for 10 years was a headache and a lesson in risk management. I don't owe you a dime. And as for Big Mama's house, I already bought the deed from the bank when your mother defaulted on that secret loan. Big Mama is staying right where she is, and she's already changed the guest room into a sewing room. You don't have a home to come back to.
You bought the house? He sounded like I'd punched him in the gut. Simone, please, I'm sorry. I was confused. Tiffany was a mistake. I love you. We can start over when I get out. I've been working on a business plan.
Stop, I said. The word was a sharp, clean break. The math is done, Marcus. I've balanced the books, and you're a zero. You're a rounding error in a life that's finally worth living. I didn't get fit for you. I didn't get rich for you. I did it because I realized that the dead weight wasn't my body. It was my belief that I needed a man like you to be somebody.
Simone, wait.
Goodbye, Marcus. Enjoy the 5-year plan. I hear the librarian there has some great books on actuary science. Maybe you can finally learn how to count.
I didn't wait for him to respond. I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Then I picked up my $5,000 phone and tossed it, not into the ocean, I'm not wasteful, but into the hands of my security guard. Get me a new one, I said. New number, new everything. I'm done with the old frequencies. I stood up and walked to the railing of the yacht. I looked at my reflection in the water. I was 35 years old, and for the first time, I wasn't looking at myself through the eyes of a narcissist. I wasn't wondering if I was too much or not enough. I was just Simone. I thought about the women watching this, the ones sitting at their kitchen tables wondering if they should stay. The ones being told they're boring or stagnant by men who couldn't even manage a checkbook without a woman's help.
Here is the final receipt, y'all. Your worth isn't a market value that fluctuates based on someone else's opinion. It's a fixed asset. And if you let someone treat you like a liability for too long, don't be surprised when your life starts going into the red.
The math of self-love is simple. Subtract the narcissists, add some boundaries, and multiply your peace. I looked back at the shore. I saw a group of tourists taking pictures of the yacht, wondering who was on board.
They probably thought I was a celebrity or a princess. They didn't see the plain actuary who used to pack lunches and cry in the shower.
I raised my $1,500 bottle of wine toward the horizon.
To the women who were underestimated, I whispered, and to the men who realized too late that the gray rock was actually a diamond. I walked back to my lounge chair and opened a book. My life was quiet, my heart was full, and Marcus Valentine was exactly where he belonged, in the past, with a 5-year debt to pay to the truth. But y'all, as the yacht started to pull out further into the deep blue sea, I noticed a small black envelope tucked into my Chanel bag that I hadn't seen before.
It didn't have a return address. It just had my name written in a handwriting I hadn't seen since my graduation from Spelman. I opened it, and my heart skipped a beat for the first time in a year.
The math was always right, Simone, but you forgot about the hidden variable.